Hey, what's going on, everybody? I hope you're doing great. This is my first Watsky Wednesday in a really long time, and the format's different this time because obviously I've been doing live streams, but the Google streaming process, since they realized that Google Plus was a total failure, has changed a lot, and so live streaming doesn't work on my second YouTube channel right now, and I'm a technological cretin and I haven't got it set up yet. So I solicited questions from Twitter, and I'm going to be recording this video, and instead of doing it live, doing it right now, talking to myself, and then uploading it. So, hey, good to talk to you. I am coming at you live from Brooklyn, New York, in my apartment that I'm only in for another week right now. And I've been living in New York City since September, very quietly working on stuff, mostly the book, maybe some other stuff. And so you haven't heard from me a lot on social media, but you'll be hearing more from me, and looking forward to it. It's been a really interesting year and a cool one, and in some ways really great to just be a little unplugged, but I'm looking forward a lot to diving back in everything. So you'll be seeing a lot more of me soon. And I apologize for bombarding you guys with book announcemements and everything. I know I've been advertising that super heavy, and just so I get it out of the way, if you are interested in entering this raffle that I got, I've been doing these competitions for people who pre-order my book where you can win shit, and I did one for like my old merch and VIP tickets and rare t-shirts. Probably saw all of that advertising I was doing. And the last one is until May 30th, at which point the only incentive to buy the book will be because you love me and you're interested in reading it. But until then, you can also be bribed with this poster, this quotes poster that 50 people who pre-order it and enter their information on my website get. And it's a quote poster, a drawstring bag, and autographed book plate. 50 people pre-order before May 30th get that shit. And I wrote the URL on an envelope, and I wasn't sure which way it was going to work because this camera flips things backwards, so I wrote it both ways. The one on the bottom is the one that I had to write backwards, as you can tell by my shitty S right there. So yeah, georgewatsky.com/books, got all that information, blah, blah, blah. All right, enough talking about all that. I'm going to get to your questions that you asked me, starting with Rob Wilson, who asks, George, how do you stand to be so beautiful? That's a really good question, Rob. It's a daily struggle for me, honestly. It's a huge battle when I get up in the morning and I realize that just by stepping out the door, I might hurt people's fragile egos. Just by looking at me, it could make them feel bad about themselves by comparison. I've seen really tragic things happen when I walk out the door, and young kids who haven't really fully formed their self-worth yet see me and realize that they will never, regardless of how much money they make or how much plastic surgery they have, they'll never match the beauty of my subtle nose bump or my beautifully square jaw, and they melt. I see them crumple under the weight of their insecurities, and that is a burden that I carry as an extremely beautiful person. And it's something that, without sort of intentionally mangling myself, I can't really get over. I just need to learn to live with that burden and try to do my best with it, and hopefully bring some positivity into the world. And I think people do love to see beautiful people, and it can definitely encourage some jealousy and feelings like that. But I think that by adding another gorgeous element to this world, I've brought it something. And something people ask me a lot is if I believe in God, and sometimes the answer that I give them is for me, beauty is a form of God. And as you've heard my lyrics on Whoa, 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 sometimes people ask me what my meaning behind that was. I thought I was an atheist until I realized I'm a God. And if beauty is God, and to me, in a way it is, you do the math. Okay, next question. Have you ever had to poop while on stage? If so, what do you do? It sounds like a silly question. It's actually a very practical question, and some real, no pun intended, some real ass shit. And the answer really is no. I haven't had a disaster. I'm sure that a lot of people have. I'm really lucky, knock on wood. I've had a lot of other stuff happen, I've had to vomit on stage. I was playing the small room at the Catalyst in Santa Cruz on the Sloppy Seconds tour back in 2012, right after I did the Nothing Like the First Time tour, and I was just not used to jumping around that much. I hadn't toured to the point where I was really sort of used to controlling the energy, and I had to throw up. I literally ran off the stage. I don't even remember if I found a trash can. I think I did. I think I threw up. I ran off the stage to the right and then in back of the stage and then vomited while the musicians were playing, and then ran right back on the stage and picked up my verse halfway through and then kept going and told the audience halfway, like after the song, what had happened. So that was kind of bad. I feel really fortunate I was in a small enough stage where I could run off and throw up. Otherwise, it's something that scares me actually, is vomiting on stage. And if you jump around too much, especially when you're not in practice or at high altitudes, that's like a real serious thing that could happen. It's just suddenly a wave of nausea hits you and you throw up on stage. And for those of you who follow my work, you probably know that I'm an epileptic, and so I also worry about the possibility of having a seizure on stage, because aerobic exercise is one of the things that triggers seizures for me. But for some reason, I never have had a seizure on stage with all the hundreds of shows that I've done. Very, very lucky, knock on wood for that. And I'm back on medication now, anticonvulsants, so I'm probably less likely to have it than during the times where I was trying to wean myself off of it. But that hasn't happened. Sometimes I ask college venues to tamp down the strobe lights during my set. Well, I've never had a problem with strobing lights, but just because there's so many other stress factors, the possible dehydration and the exercise you're getting, that I just like the risk I'm not interested in taking. But in terms of having to take a shit, no, not really. I feel like maybe during Warped Tour was when it was the worst. But those were only half-hour sets. I never really have had a serious close call. And I think that if it did happen to me, that, I don't know, you come up with an excuse. You just got to keep going. And I think mostly try and make the audience think that nothing wrong has happened. When I was playing a show in Montana recently that went really great, but I hadn't played with a band for a long time, I forgot my lyrics to the second verse of Whoa, Whoa, Whoa. And the song was going, the whole show was going fucking awesome. And when you're in the zone, you don't think about forgetting lyrics. You just go for it. And hopefully you're so well practiced, you pick up the verse right before you start. But I just got there and I was like, and I walked over. So the first thing that I did was I was just holding the mic and looking sternly at the audience. And then I realized I forgot my lyrics and we're like 2 bars into the verse. And I turn over to Kurt, the bass player, and I just go, bass solo, like with all the confidence that I can muster. And Kurt never fucking solos in our set, so he was a little shell-shocked, but I fortunately play with super talented musicians that just picked it up, and Kurt played a funky bass solo, and I walked over to Pat, and I was like, what's the start of the second verse? And he says, I jumped the freeway median, I'm savage. And I, obviously should have known it, but I was just so beat at that point and emotionally, mentally fried. So Kurt finishes the solo. I just start my verse. The band picks it up, and I think most of the audience probably had no idea that I'd forgotten it. You just don't let them see you sweat. So if I had to take a shit, I would probably ask the band to solo. If the drummer hadn't started playing it, I'd probably tell Cootie to probably cut in the middle of the song and just we can do certain things. The beauty of not playing the tracks is that when I play with musicians, we're not playing the tracks at all. I can just look at them and cue another section. If I put my fist up, it's not a move of solidarity. That means we're the form. We're up to go to the start of the form. And it's probably what I'd do. I'd put it onto the musicians, run off the stage, take a shit, and then run back out there. I don't know what else I would do. Good question. Am I still in touch with the guys from Invisible Ink? William McGlone asks. Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Max is my regular keyboard player and has been for years. He's my cousin, and he plays keys and horn in the regular arrangement of Creme Fraiche in my band. And so, yeah, I see Max all the time. And Daniel, the other producer and the flute player, I see him all the time too. He's in San Francisco, and even though he's not in Creme Fraiche, I see him around. We lived in Boston together, and it's really crazy to think about, but the Invisible Ink album came out in 2007, which means that next year is the 10-year anniversary of Invisible Ink. And this is something I haven't said anything about, but there's the possibility of a 10-year Invisible Ink anniversary, Invisible Ink reunion album, maybe. I'm not saying there is, but I'm also not saying that there's not the possibility of that. All right. Next question. What was the biggest challenge you faced while writing your book? It was, I think the thing that went in writing the essay collection that was the thing I was most trying to wrap my head around is how do I try and make something that is just by its very nature incredibly self-absorbed, not really, really hard to read. I spent so much time writing about myself. It's gotten to the point where I'm getting a bit frustrated by it. There's always going to be new ways to write about yourself and to put that into the world, and there's just a million brilliant artistic examples of people who write autobiographical shit for their entire life, and it's always amazing, and they're compassionate, wonderful people. But I'm starting to get to the point where I'm interested in starting to maybe do some narrative stuff, some fiction. At some point in my life, I'm sure that'll happen, but going in and realizing that and even if I don't call it a memoir, it's still memoir. It's still autobiographical nonfiction, and so how do I do that with a sense of self-awareness? There's only so like but just by calling yourself self-aware, that's like almost not a self-aware statement, because it's like a person can't call themselves humble and be humble. And can you really write a collection of essays and not be self-absorbed? I think the answer to that is no. It is a fundamentally self-absorbed thing to do, but how do I not make it super douchey when you read it? And so that was something that I was challenged by going in, just personally challenged myself, and you'll be the judge of it when you read the collection. But I really wanted the stories to be fun and entertaining, but also not so fun that there's no weight to them, which is the balance I'm always trying to strike in my poetry and my music. That's why some people who like comedy are like, wait, this is kind of weirdly serious. And some people who like really more heavy material don't like the levity that I put in, but that's just kind of where my head's at, like where I always try and have my voice land in that middle spot. So that the essay collection was me trying to find that happy medium again. And I think I accomplished it. I definitely, reading through the book, just like when I listen to an album that's done and I can't change it anymore, I think, oh man, I could have rephrased that sentence in a better way, in a cleaner way. I could have restructured this. I had this great point that I thought of after it was too late, but you just have to put it out eventually. But I actually wrote a draft of the collection and sent it to my editor, Kate at Plume, who is an amazing, amazing editor. She's been such a pleasure to work with. And basically the consensus was, hey, this is cool, but write it again. And I'd written at that point, like if you'd spread it out on actual, how many pages it is, it would, like a 200-page manuscript, and I had to start over from the ground up. And I sort of sensed it wasn't that good. And I think as a writer, once you get to a certain point, you start to know when it's not that good, but when you're working in a new form, you're not really sure. And so I was hoping that she would get back to me once I sent her the draft and say, this is fucking amazing. This is a Pulitzer Prize winning manuscript. So it didn't surprise me when she came back and basically challenged me to do better. But it's not what you want to hear when you've spent months and months honing in on something. But with that being said, I basically went from the ground up on my second draft, and I'm so much the better for it. I mean, it's an infinitely better collection now. I'm a better prose writer. I've learned how to write an essay, I think, in a more compelling way, and I'm sure if I kept doing it that I would get better and better at it, but I don't know if I if I want to do that, just because I have so many different interests. And like I said, writing autobiographical fiction was a really great challenge this time around, but I feel like I'm scraping the bottom of the well at this point a little bit. So if I did it again, I'd probably wait a while, wait for my perspective to change. Okay. Will I come back to Lawrence this year? Asks Gabby. Funny you should say that, Gabby. If anybody from Lawrence, Kansas is watching this right now, I know I say it every time I come play the Granada, and I generally mean it in most of the venues and cities that I play, that I love playing that city because there's really not a whole lot of spots in the world I've ever been to that I just hate playing. And the one or two that I do, I'm not going to mention right now. But Lawrence is one of those places that when I say that I love playing Lawrence, Kansas, I really, really mean that I love playing Lawrence, Kansas. That's not some patronizing bullshit. Anytime someone asks me, like, what's a wild card city that you just would not expect to be fucking dope, that always is, it is always Lawrence. It's always the Granada. And to the point where if I were planning a tour in the future, I'm not saying I am because I'm not announcing anything, I may have gone out of my way to make sure not only that Lawrence was included on that hypothetical tour, but that I was playing Lawrence on a weekend night because, and if I were planning that hypothetical tour and I were talking to my agent about it, they may have said to me that there's literally no other artist they've ever worked with that's ever routed a tour in order to play Lawrence on the premiere night. Like you try and make your weekend shows the ones in the biggest cities, and Lawrence obviously not that big a city, but a city with super dope heart. And every time I go to Lawrence, I've played the same venue. I've played it 3 times, the Granada. It's just this amazing energy in the room. And the first time, I think I played on the Nothing Like the First Time tour for like 120 people there. And the second time I came back and played for 250 people there. And the third time I came back and played for 500 people there. And every time it's been doubling, but it's a 1,000-person room. And so last time I was in Lawrence, I was like, I'm never going to skip Lawrence on a tour, and I'm not going to skip the Granada until I sell it out. And I mean that. I love playing there, and I intend to sell that motherfucker out. It's a big room for a small town, but it's a goal I've set myself. And so if I were to play Lawrence in the future, I hope you guys turn out for that because I love playing there. Okay. Jake asks, what can we expect from the book poetry tour? Well, it's a little bit unlike all the tours I've played in the past. As you can see from the events, if I haven't let you know yet that I'm playing these reading dates when my book comes out starting on June 14th, I am. Oh, by the way, sitting next to me is a huge box of the copies of my book, which I got, and I have them now. The actual, like, it's so crazy. It's like probably hearing your song on the radio for the first time if you're a kid who loved reading growing up, and to a librarian mom and a just super nerd dad to hold in your hand from an actual real publisher a book that you wrote that's coming out. I mean, it's such a fucking amazing feeling, and I feel so lucky to have that opportunity with so many great writers. Because I have this social media following, I'm not kidding myself and thinking that I got it just because I submitted a brilliant manuscript to a slush pile that an editor picked up. I know because I have a social media following that I was given this opportunity, but it really means a lot to me to try and be seen as a real writer. And whether that's me kidding myself or me holding myself to a high standard, like I said before, I'll let the readers be the judge. But I really did work hard to make sure that it wasn't a cash grab for me. Jake, I'll circle back to your question, but just want to say like how meaningful it is for me to be able to put a book out and how seriously I take the task and opportunity that I have to try and do it well, and how hard I worked at that. And it's an opportunity that a lot of people who go through MFA programs and PhD programs never get to have, regardless of how fabulous their writing is, just because it's a rare opportunity. And for me, it's not a cash grab. It's not like me having the opportunity to get a big money book deal and just shitting out a manuscript. I'm losing money on the whole arrangement. I worked as hard or harder than I work on an album, and for longer and with less instant gratification, and made much, much, much less money. I have a very, it's not an insignificant deal in the grand scheme of things, but compared to how much money that I could make with the same amount of work on music, it's not even close. And I also shot a video for the essay collection that just in the budget of the video alone that I came out of pocket for, I spent more than my entire advance for the book. So I'm already at a negative before I even start, and it's because like it's what I wanted to do. It's where I saw my writing going. I wanted to do something different and not just rest on the fact that it was easy for me to have a formula for I could just write a fast rap song that had 16 bar fast rap verses and a little melodic hook, and I could do that over and over and over and over again, and to varying degrees of quality. But that wouldn't be interesting for anyone, even if that's what they think they want to hear from me, because it'd just be fucking boring. So it was an opportunity to really do something different. And so for the shows, it's in some ways not going to have the just raw energy excitement of a concert. It's not going to be like a rager party, but it will in its own way. Like for people who like seated shows and to really be able to hear everything that's going on and take in the words, it's just a different vibe. I played college gigs doing spoken word where I would just do an hour of poetry for years and years, and I did a similar thing for the VIP pre-tour on the All You Can Do tour. It's just me on a microphone. There's going to be a DJ spinning a really cool set. There's a guy named DJ D on Decibels, who I've known for years, doing a pre-show set, playing good music. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to do some poems and read some excerpts from my book and talk some shit and probably answer a couple questions. And then I'll be hanging out afterwards, and just like every show that I do ever and have done since I started doing spoken word for 15 people, I'll stay afterwards and meet everybody who wants to hang out and say what's up and is willing to stick it out, and sign any books for anyone who wants. Always shake hands and hear people out if they have any questions and say what's up and just hang. So that's pretty much it. I have a feeling they're going to be much lower key shows than and more casual shows than the concerts, but I think that'll be cool energy too. So yeah, feel free to come through. The dates are at georgewatsky.com/book, like all the other information is, and many of them are free. So I think with the exception of New York, which is on release night on the 14th at an amazing store called Strand, they're all New York, San Francisco, Seattle, and Chicago, I think, are the ones that have fairly inexpensive tickets, and then most of them encourage you to buy the book with a ticket. But other than that, they're just free events to show up, and I have an RSVP page on my website to make sure that they don't get so crowded that the people who sign up early don't have seats. So check it out. If you want to come through, definitely RSVP, because some of those lists are filling up. Like Boston and LA, I think, are already full, but put your name down for sure. So that's it for the book tour. And then for last question, Linda wants to know new music with 3 upside down Spanish question marks. And yeah, that's a really interesting question. You know, like I said at the beginning of this video, and I sort of touched on in my other video for the book, I've been out in New York since September, and I've been working really hard. And I've been working on the book, obviously, and tweaking the book has been a big part of the time that I've spent. But I've always, I've been doing music for years and years, and for those of you who know my what I've been up to the last few years, that's been my focus. And I never said anything about quitting music just because I was writing a book. So I think that everybody hopefully will be stoked that